Welcome to this live chat facility tutorial. We have had a lot of questions recently about the chat facility and how to use it, so let's get into the video. The chat facility is built with students in mind, with a tool that doesn't need to be parent or teacher-led. Each of our pages are linked to the person behind the broadcast, even after it's finished, so you can always ask your questions and get a response about the broadcast. So, let's have a look at how to use the chat facility. To use the chat facility, the first thing to do is to type your comment or question into the chat box. You can now enter your screen name. Your screen name will show when you type your question or comment. Now you will see the chat facility ask for your email address. As I mentioned before, each of our pages are linked to people from the organisation who can reply to your questions. You can enter your email address, which will not be shared with anyone, to get a direct response from the people behind the broadcast. If you do not want a direct response, then click the button at the bottom. People behind the broadcast can still respond to you if you don't provide your email address. This just means you may have to come back to the page to check the response. To type your question, simply click on the chat box. You will then see two symbols appear. The @ symbol will mean your comment or question will be posted publicly for others to see. The email symbol means your comment or question can be sent directly to the person of your choice from the list that will appear. You can now speak to the people behind the broadcast and ask any questions you may have, or check out our partner pages to see the companies we work with who you can speak to right now about their current vacancies. You can also check out our careers page, which connects you to employers. Our live chat service is linked 24/7 to employers from a wide range of sectors, all waiting to hear from you. You can leave a question about how to produce a professional CV or how to prepare for interviews, anything work related, and one of our businesses will respond to you directly. You can also access a wide variety of live interactive broadcasts and video on demand with the live chat support on all pages. Now this bit is for the parents, guardians and teachers. The best bit about the live chat facility is that it is completely moderated, so you don't need to worry if your young person leaves a silly comment, as it will only show on their screen and no one else's. Another great thing about the chat facility is that it is GDPR protected, so no information is shared with anyone else. We will protect all email addresses and will never share personal information of the young people. If you have any questions about the chat facility or the Learn Live channel, please use the email us icon at the top of the page. Thank you, stay safe and stay tuned.
Good morning everyone. Today you're going to meet Heriot-Watt University experts who can help you understand the types of materials that you might think about when designing your esteem pavilion, and also how to create a simple diagram to help you plan the rooms and spaces in your design. Again, experts are on hand after the broadcast to answer your questions that you may have by placing them in the live chat, which is next to the video player. Now, on with the broadcast.
Good morning. This video looks at choosing materials for your esteem pavilion and then moves on to beginning to make some drawings, in this case some bubble diagrams, to understand how you might arrange the space. These images show 3 buildings which I think about quite a lot when I'm designing, and I wanted to show them to you as a way of beginning to think about materials. So on the left-hand side, we have a museum in Spain, and what I love about this space is the progression of arches moving further and further down the view in this particular photograph. It's a wonderful space to walk through because you get that sense of rhythm moving through the space. And I like the fact that the space is so tall, so wide, and the material used here, brick, is so small compared with the scale of the spaces. So there's a kind of rhythm and also the form, the arches to this space that I really, really enjoy. The second image that I'm showing you here is a house, famous house by Frank Lloyd Wright in the USA. Here, it's really about a lot of overlapping planes. You can see a lot of horizontal forms in this image, and again, formed by brick. But in this case, there's a lot of shadow, a lot of overhang, and this is an important one for changing the climate inside the building that you're designing. And it could be particularly important in the hot desert environment that you're focusing on. The final image here is of the Schroeder House in Utrecht in the Netherlands. This is a modernist house, and it was extremely adventurous at the time it was built in 1924. And here you can see there's a lot of playing with forms. There is a lot of views in and out of the space. And the materials here are concrete and glass, and you have that ability to play a lot more with forms than perhaps you can with the traditional brick arrangement of the other 2. Here we're looking at 3 very different materials, and you should do a bit of research to see what the pros and cons are of each of these choices. On the left, we're looking at a timber building. Well, of course, that's a natural material. We can regrow trees, so it seems very green, environmentally friendly. Is that still true in a desert environment? And look at the way that building's being put together. It looks like a lot of that's been made already. Well, is there an advantage to that? In the middle image there, we're looking at a steel frame, and you can see it's been bolted together. Well, one of the advantages there might be that you could bolt something together on site, and of course you could unbolt it again, and then maybe construct it on a different site, so you could reuse your building, not in just one place, but somewhere else in the world. Finally, we've got this amazing and really quite exciting shape put together from a concrete building on the far right. Well, that allows for some extremely exciting architecture. And you can see the really dark shade created under that building, which could be really valuable in the desert sun. Timber, steel, concrete. What are the pros and what are the cons? This is some of the research you could do today. The final 3 images I have here also show 3 different materials, but what I'd like to particularly think about is the difference in the form caused by the choice of material. So on the left-hand side, the material choice is steel, and we have a frame building, and you could imagine a lot of open spaces in that building. It's columns and ceilings and overhangs, possibly a lot of glass as well. The middle building there, in brick, has a lot more wall area, which could be good in a hot desert environment where you want to protect yourself from the sun, or where you want to create some interesting internal spaces to focus people on the exhibits that you have. The final image there is concrete, but you see, unlike the first 2, it's a very curvaceous, amorphous shape. It would have been formed probably from a steel skeleton first and concrete sprayed on it. But this curvy, natural form is much more easy to produce in concrete or in earth than it is using bricks or steel or timber. So there are so many choices of materials, and some of the students of STEAM would be pleased to share with you their own interests in materials. So that was a quick overview of materials. I suggest you look for buildings that excite you and think about how they're made and what materials they are made with. The key things for us to focus on now are a material which you enjoy, which you can imagine forming the kind of space that you want your pavilion to be. Also thinking about the energy impact of the material that you choose. Perhaps can it be recycled? And finally thinking about the form that your building may take because of the material that you choose. Having thought through your materials, the next thing to think about is your plan. And we'd like you to start that by looking at making a bubble diagram of the spaces inside your esteemed pavilion. So I wanted to share with you the beginning of a bubble diagram of a more complex building, something perhaps a little bit more like your pavilion. So in this case, I'm going to think about designing a bubble diagram for a primary school. So for me, the most important thing about a primary school, where I'm going to start my bubble diagram, is the children themselves. So I'm going to draw a nice big bubble here as a starting point. And that is going to be the playground. And this, for me, is going to be the center of my design. This is going to be the most important space. Of course, that's outside. So I then need to move to inside the building. And I don't want to walk straight into the classroom or the hall. I want to go into an entrance lobby, I think. So somewhere that we can take off dirty clothes or put away toys and leave the classroom, leave the playground and come into the school proper. I also want to think about security. So I'm going to put a reception into a space linked into the entrance lobby you can see there. And that's going to always have somebody working at it when the school is open. So that somebody can make sure that anyone walking into the school is somebody who ought to be there. And actually, while I think about it, I'm going to move that reception bubble as I draw it over this way a bit. Because I would like that reception area to be able to look over into the playground. Just gives me that bit of extra security if the children are playing in the playground and they know that some of the staff are able to see them and can react if anything goes wrong. Now I want to move further into the building, and let's make a hallway, a corridor coming off the entrance lobby. So let's link it into the entrance lobby there. And coming off that corridor, of course, I want, well, some of the most essential rooms in a school. Let's put a classroom in here. And of course, I don't just want one classroom. I need to have more than one. So let's add a second classroom in here. And then another one alongside that as well. And you see, importantly here, these classroom bubbles are linked into the hallway bubble. And what that tells me is that the classrooms are accessed from the hallway. You'll note I haven't linked the classrooms to each other. So in my head, it's not possible to walk from one classroom directly to another. You have to go through the hallway. And in fact, I've just thought of something else that I need to put into the school, and I want to be off the entrance hall, so I'm going to rearrange my bubbles a bit. If we move the classrooms a bit further down the hallway here, that gives me a bit more space near the entrance lobby. So what am I thinking of? Well, every building really needs to think about the health and the safety and well-being of the people using it. And one thing that we almost always need is to have access to welfare facilities, to a bathroom. I'll put in here to a WC toilets. So this would be the bathroom and toilet block, and I've got it there. I've moved the classrooms along so that can be accessed quite easily from the playground directly as well. And here then, I'm also going to need a staff room, an area for the staff who are going to be teaching in my classrooms. And you see, I haven't put that directly next to the classrooms. I want it to be a little bit further away. I've actually put it linked off the back of reception. So these blue lines now are just me thinking, well, this is where I'm going to want doors. This is where I'm going to want connections between the spaces. In fact, yeah, as I start thinking about that, it probably makes more sense for me to also connect the staff room area through to the bathroom block. So I'll just move that bubble across there. So it's connecting both into the reception and into the bathroom block. And then the other thing that you can see from this is that there's kind of two parts of this diagram, and they're separated by this wiggly pink line that I'm drawing now. And there's the classrooms on one side, there's the playground and the kind of entrance on the other. What's this about? Well, the classrooms, of course, want to be quite quiet spaces. These want to be spaces where we can focus on learning. We don't want too many distractions. So that's really apparent that it's a very different part of my bubble diagram from the playground. The bubbles there don't overlap. The playground is going to be quite a noisy area. So that spiky pink line that I've drawn really accentuates that there's a division here between a quiet part of the plan and a noisy part of the plan. So I could carry on with this. I would need to start thinking about dining halls, possibly some form of PE hall. Maybe I want to have some kind of garden outside, some trees, an outdoor classroom even. I need more storage. There'd be plenty of other things that I could put into this. But this is how we'd like you to now start looking at your own pavilion design. Through the research that you've done so far, you will already have come up with a number of ideas of what it is that you want your pavilion to do and the different spaces inside the pavilion that you want people to experience. And we'd like you to start putting those together a bit like I have just there as a bubble diagram. Which spaces link to which other spaces? What happens when you come in immediately? I've drawn this online, as you can see. That works very well. You can use drawing programs, you can use paint programs. You can also just use a pen and paper, and I usually, in fact, work with pen and paper myself. I find it really easy to rub out and to make the circles bigger or smaller and to run over different areas as I begin to think in different ways and design and draw some arrows. So your task for this next session is to look at a bubble diagram for your esteemed pavilion. And I suggest that you'll be drafting and redrafting that for the rest of this session. They're really simple, but bubble diagrams are extraordinarily helpful in explaining your ideas to other people, as you'll find when you have your team meetings. And they begin to really coalesce some of the key ideas that you might have. In my case, it was about having quiet areas and noisy areas and some ideas about security. But for your pavilion, maybe it's about different links that you can see or views that you want people to have. These bubble diagrams are going to be so helpful when we move on to actually looking at planning the space, which is something that we'll be doing tomorrow. Okay, thank you.
Welcome to this live chat facility tutorial. We have had a lot of questions recently about the chat facility and how to use it, so let's get into the video. The chat facility is built with students in mind, with a tool that doesn't need to be parent or teacher led. Each of our pages are linked to the person behind the broadcast, even after it's finished, so you can always ask your questions and get a response about the broadcast. So, let's have a look at how to use the chat facility. To use the chat facility, the first thing to do is to type your comment or question into the chat box. You can now enter your screen name. Your screen name will show when you type your question or comment. Now you will see the chat facility ask for your email address. As I mentioned before, each of our pages are linked to people from the organisation who can reply to your questions. You can enter your email address, which will not be shared with anyone, to get a direct response from the people behind the broadcast. If you do not want a direct response, then click the button at the bottom. People behind the broadcast can still respond to you if you don't provide your email address. This just means you may have to come back to the page to check the response. To type